here Doyon is, with 12.5 million acres. I mean, we are one of the largest landowners in the United States. To me, that's a very unique situation because not only do we have to look at our profit margins, we have to look at our shareholder well-being and also the enhancement and protection of those lands. I think some of the early challenges that Doyon faced was the fact that ANSCA established these corporations. For people who had absolutely no background in running a corporation, we had to learn about land selections and conveyance of land, and also how to run a business. And those, I think, were some major challenges back in those early days. And I can remember elders coming to the University of Alaska when I was a student during the ANSCA struggle and begging us to become involved in Native politics because we had the education to read the documents that they were struggling with.
So we had 200 and some brand new village corporations in the state, 12 brand new regional corporations, and one in Seattle, the 13th, which most people forget. There were very, very few economic opportunities in Alaska at that time. So all of a sudden you had an influx of new corporations with a new model, and the early boards thought that if you weren't successful, you could lose your land in the first 20 years. You had to be successful, and everybody was competing against the same type of work, same type of jobs. Challenge at the same time, you were trying to enroll people using the BI system to enroll tribal shareholders. You were trying to select your traditional lands. Early board had to make a monster determination working with the tribes. What were the lands? Since we were very migratory, nomadic people, we ended up with a lot of land, but then we also had to diversify that land and make sure that we were able to choose some lands for future economic opportunities. Where were the resources on our lands? What evidence and what history was there to prove that? So it was a big, big job.
The first land conveyances happened several years after the passage of the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. The act was passed in 1971. Doyon Limited was incorporated in 1972, and it took several years for Doyon to make its land selections over such a large area. And the first land title coming into Doyon happened quite a bit of time after the passage of ANSCA.
We went out to the villages and to each village and met with them and discussed the land selection. We wanted to be very careful if there was any potential for subsurface revenue. We wanted to make sure that they were aware of it and to see how we would do our selection in order to get to it if we ever did. And we began our land selection process, mapped out where we thought some prime property for development might be, and then we, of course, the checkerboard pattern around the village corporations that was pretty much set by the act. Section 7I, we were persuaded by attorneys, one of our Washington attorneys and one of our in-house attorneys, that the key word in Section 7I was all revenues had to be distributed to other corporations. I argued with them, and I still like my argument the best, was that the key words were not all revenues. The key word was from the subsurface estate. No other corporation in America, or in the world for that matter, has to share 70% of their revenues with other corporations. And it's just a matter of when will the corporation begin to fail.
We have made land selections early in our history for many different reasons, including things such as local use, subsistence, forestry, gravel, mineral potential, and also oil and gas. Doyon partnered with some of its communities and its early leaders to make land selections for certain values that would provide in-region economic development opportunities, and oil and gas is a key part of those land selections.
Doyon invested about $16 to $20 million in a company called Tannin Asbestos. We had one of the largest asbestos mines in the world right across from Cassiar, the Canadian side.
We had invested our own money in that as we were going along and had made the discovery, and it was so abundant that the birds were making their nests out of asbestos. It came out that it was a health hazard, and so we had to stop that. What came about on that is that corporations were allowed to sell their losses. So a number of corporations that did that, including Doyon. So we recovered our money.
Doyon formed some fantastic joint ventures. Their early successes and late successes today, I mean, it's because they found good people that ran good businesses. We formed joint ventures.
Doyon drilling was started in the early 80s, and with the joint venture partner, Nugget, I believe this was Nugget Drilling. And then in 1992, Doyon bought out the joint venture partner, which was a very, very good move. And I think as it's shown, as it progressed, how successful it's been.
In building affiliates to Doyon Drilling, the pipeline services, the camp services, we used to have the food services, making that a total umbrella, build that resume so we're more competitive on the slope, more competitive in that market. We have the most sophisticated and best maintained equipment on the slope, in my opinion. We've always kept our equipment maintained. We've had some fantastic managers work for us over the years. Ron Wilson, phenomenal guy, started from the grassroots with Nugget as a roustabout and worked his way all the way up to Doyon Drilling president. He's done a phenomenal job. He's had a good team and grown shareholders in that capacity also, and moved people up into mid-management positions, and very, very proud of Doyon Drilling.
I started as a roustabout in 1993, and then I was laid off with a downturn in the industry. I switched to a company called Pool Arctic Alaska, and from there I worked various positions from roustabout to driller, and then I got a call in 2004, Ron Wilson called me and asked me if I'd like to come over and work for Doyon Drilling. Started working on Rig 16 as a driller, moved up as a tool pusher. I moved into the Anchorage office as a drilling superintendent, progressed as operations manager, and as of today, the president and general manager.
Doyon Foundation was incorporated in 1989. Prior to that, Doyon had run like a scholarship program, and they had a charitable giving program. They funded things like the Okanaga and the Fiddler's Festival and several other things. And I think forming the foundation was the next step in Doyon's development. Just having that nonprofit arm and kind of a tax shelter also for the corporation. When I ran the foundation, we were still small. The foundation was relatively new. I was the second executive director, and our asset base was $500,000. It was, like I said, it was small, but still forming. We had a director. He was on the Doyon Limited board, but also on the foundation board, Don Peters from Fort Yukon. And he was very familiar with private foundations and nonprofit organizations. He learned about endowments, education endowments, and he was a strong advocate for education endowments. And serving on the foundation board, that was one of the things that he really pushed for. So I championed that as the executive director and worked very hard to make sure that we established an endowment.
The vote in 1992 is how I got my shares in Doyon. So I'm a Class C shareholder, like more than half of our shareholders, and very thankful to our board and shareholders for making that choice back in 1992.
When our elders fought so diligently for the land claims, that's what it was about, was the land claims. It wasn't about distributions or money. It was about land. And so I always felt that all of the shareholders were entitled to be part of the corporation because of that.
I'm most proud of the work early in my tenure at Doyon in the perpetual enrollment of our Class C shareholders. So the original vote in 1992 was a one-time backwards-looking enrollment of descendants. So I got my shares then and several thousand other Class C shareholders, but those born between 1992 and 2007 were not getting shares. And when I first started Doyon, we were right in the beginning of our campaign for that perpetual enrollment, which happened at the 2007 annual meeting, and was really proud to help work on that so that all of our eligible descendants can be Class C shareholders.
We did a shareholder survey, and a majority of our shareholders were in favor of opening continuous enrollment. There was a lot of discussion about dilution of shares if we opened up the enrollment, but the whole notion of the shareholders being part of the land also was a big factor in that decision. You know, we looked at what is going to happen down the road, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, who is going to own Doyon? And you know, that discussion, I think, led to Doyon eventually issuing the life estate shares with the open enrollment.
When I was president of the company, and in walked Billy Gordon, who was Bishop Gordon's son, who I'd known since high school, and Andy Warwick. They walked in and they had purchased the Fairbanks Utilities, and they had a partner named Corex. There was a big 8A contract coming up. There were 12 opportunities for all the utilities on the Army bases. I brought Tim Wallis in. He led the negotiations for over 2 years.
Doyon Properties was an 8A certified company, and that we could become eligible to take that on. But we decided that we would agree to form a joint venture with them. We were successful with our presentation and received a 50-year contract.
We ended up with all 12 utilities, the largest privatization contract in Army history. Fort Wainwright, Fort Greely, and Fort Richardson. They provide all of the sewer, water, electrical, heat on Fort Wainwright, Fort Greely, and Fort Richardson.
Rig 26 went into service here in the last year at Doyon Drilling, and that's the largest land rig in North America, and just kind of a technological marvel that is amazing to see that rig get developed from sketches on a piece of paper to operating on the North Slope, and it's the future of North Slope activity. Doyon's leading the way again.
With the extended reach part, we can branch out and drill out up to 37,000 foot, which gives it that capability of reaching those reservoirs that you couldn't reach before unless you were to add or build new roads and infrastructure pads.
If Doyon can't run a project as clean as anybody else in the country, then we haven't done a very good job. I think we can.
One of the projects that I'm most excited about is our partnership in our carbon offset program with the Lands Department. The carbon offset program allows us to highlight 235,000 acres of Doyon land and its forestry values. We partner with different companies to offset their emissions by utilizing the tree coverage, and this provides revenues to benefit our shareholders, as well as, again, highlighting the important values of our boreal forest in the Arctic.
Whether it's oil or gas, or whether it's hard rock minerals, rare earth, whatever it might be, carbon mix, saving some of our land for the carbon credits and getting paid for that for 40 years or more is a moving forward type of operation, so I look forward to more of that.
My hopes for Doyon over the next 50 years is to definitely finish the land title. We have pursued most of that title, which is in either a final status or an interim conveyed status. We still have about 400,000 acres of land title to get out of selections into a title position. And so we hope to complete that and continue to provide really important projects that benefit our local communities in the Land Department.
I'm really excited about the next 50 years, proud of the past 50 years, but we're a very strong corporation. We have a very strong balance sheet and other financials, and we have a lot of great employees. So that combination really positions us for continued growth and the continuation of being able to provide dividends, jobs, training, scholarships, all the other things that we care about with our shareholders and other stakeholders. We just announced a partnership with Honea, a village corporation in Southeast in the tourism segment. The board identified tourism as a possible growth area for us a few years ago, and so this was one of the steps that was really important for us to take in implementing that initiative.
Doyon's ability to continue to grow, to take on and seek out new business ventures, and continually to take those on and be profitable each year. That's paid back in dividends to shareholders. It's paid back with education. There's many different ways that Doyon gives back to its shareholders.
Well, I think one of the uniqueness of it is its shareholders, and the fact that we have a real strong feeling towards the land, the people, the culture, our language, and I think that's going to go a long way.
Stewardship of our land, and we're a land claims company. Our ancestors walked this land for generations, thousands of years, surviving on the land. To me, it's a sacred trust to keep the lands as pristine as we can, but still enhance those small areas that can be enhanced for resource development, to continue to be able to preserve our lands, to be able to continue to maintain our traditional cultural ways, and bringing the language along through the Doyon Foundation.
Of course, I would like to see them, continue to grow and be prosperous, and continue on with saving our heritage and culture, and continue to be good guardians of our land.
My advice to young Doyon shareholders is to take the time to learn the history of your village corporation and of Doyon Limited. It's really important to know how these corporations were started and what they do today, and is a very key aspect to the future of our communities.
Doyon's been committed to our shareholders for the past 50 years. We'll remain committed to our shareholders and other constituents for the next 50 years. I'm very proud of the work that our early leaders put in on our behalf. They did so much with so little, and sacrificed personally, financially, professionally in many cases. That's not something the current generation have to do. So they built that foundation of success for us, and they broke the trail for us. It's our job to break the trail for the next generation, and for them to do it for the next generation.